The Complexity of Harmony by David P. Foster. Read by David P. Foster. Introduction. To play a wrong note is insignificant. To play without passion is inexcusable. Ludwig van Beethoven. The bold alarm from my cell phone shook my eardrums as I walked back into my bedroom. I had already been up for 2 hours. I had to be early for something like this. I had no idea what it would lead to. 5 months ago, I had just left my job to be an entrepreneur, and here I was, attempting to bring a community together. It felt like a calling. And when the uproar of racial inequity started to soar in 2020, for some reason, trying to bridge the gap was the only thing that made sense to me. So I decided to create an event where neighborhood kids could eat breakfast with our police chief and other local leaders. This would allow neighborhood kids to have a personal connection with local leaders and establish mentors for them to look up to. Prior to my attempt to be a community volunteer, I was flipping houses and living a carefree life as a single man with no kids. I could travel whenever I wanted. I loved my car, and my house was paid for. I wasn't rich by American standards, but all of my needs were met. I was 40 years old and hadn't made a significant impact on anyone else but myself, or so it seemed. Before I made the decision to leave my job, I was a sheet metal worker and a blue-collar worker for most of my life. The trade school guy, who was kind of a jack of all trades, was mixing it up and trying to make a difference. The boldness to believe that what I had was needed. The boldness to believe that without me, the harmony wasn't complete. This type of boldness may sound arrogant to some and foolish to others, but without the bold belief that your experience and perspective are the missing pieces to the puzzle, all progress is unlikely. I dealt with the struggle of knowing what I had was significant but not using it to make an impact. This would be the awakening of my journey. Through this journey, I witnessed polarized viewpoints attempting to achieve a common goal. My book, The Complexity of Harmony, delves into this very concept, exploring how individuals from diverse backgrounds and beliefs can come together to create something greater than themselves. Compliments to my supportive wife, Ashley, for encouraging me while I wrote this book. This book is dedicated to you and our infant son, David Jr., as I hope he will read it one day. Chapter 1. Respect. We all require and want respect, man or woman, black or white. Aretha Franklin. What does respect mean to you? In an environment where it is commonplace to disagree, the need for respect is at an all-time high. Throughout my professional and political career, I've worked with individuals with whom I've disagreed with from time to time. In fact, I've disagreed with every person I've worked with at some point. I've learned a very important trait that I now live by. The goal is no longer to agree with the person I'm in conversation with, but to respect the person I'm in conversation with. I have found that most people will give you a great amount of respect if they believe you also give respect freely and in abundance. In order to define respect, I will start by saying what respect means to me. Like many, I have a need to be listened to, carefully and attentively, and ask questions. The questions tell me that I have not only been heard, but that you studiously took notes on what I had to say. This is the number one way to earn points on my respect grade card. If you do not listen, it shows me you have no regard for different viewpoints, indicating that our conversation will not make progress. Why would I talk to someone with whom I will not make progress? I simply find a way to exit our conversation. However, if you listen attentively to me, I am 100% more likely to listen attentively to you. My number two way to earn points on my respect grade card is to hear someone say, "I understand," or "I see where you're coming from." This follows one of my personal life principles: seeking to understand, then to be understood. Don't use the phrase "I understand" if you do not really mean it. You'll only come across as insincere. But do your best to listen until you can find common ground. This will allow you to honestly and wholeheartedly develop a bond, regardless of whether you fully agree on every subject. Some ask the question, why is it important to connect with people we don't agree with? Why is it important to take a diplomatic approach to every discussion, particularly those with strong opposing views? Why is it necessary, even when we don't need to work together, to try to understand a different perspective, even if it doesn't sway your personal beliefs? Because without healthy communication, coworkers will lack crucial information, teammates will not win championships, and politicians will face government shutdowns. Without respect and healthy communication, families may struggle to resolve conflicts, communities may face division, and societies may fail to progress toward common goals. I've learned that seeking to communicate and respect each other before disagreements occur in order to make deposits in our relationship bank account is far more beneficial than waiting to make withdrawals only to find out we have never deposited anything into our relationship fund. When disagreements occur, we'll need to rely on this account to withdraw from in times of communication breakdowns. One example of making a deposit in our communication bank account would be asking someone out for a cup of coffee before you have an important issue to discuss. This builds trust and establishes relationships. It's harder for someone to feel disrespected if their first impression of you is positive. We are all human at the end of the day. Another example of making a relationship deposit is finding common ground. This can be done by complimenting a colleague on something they said or their particular viewpoint on a certain matter. It typically allows our teammates to be more receptive to future conversations and make them feel respected and valued. The more we feel valued, the more likely we will be able to discuss highly sensitive topics like race, religion, and politics. On the other hand, in the real world, we will have to work through disrespect as well. Different viewpoints can create barriers and hinder progress. The threat of being offended occurs when a tone of voice seems a bit condescending or dismissive, or when statements feel belittling or disregarding, or when someone feels unheard. If a proactive approach is taken, perhaps these situations can be avoided. Nevertheless, be prepared for these situations and have a plan. I refer to these situations as bridge opportunities. During these bridge opportunities, respectful communication and actively seeking common ground become even more crucial. I have learned in these times that choosing to view each scenario as personal could be detrimental, as opposed to taking a step back and addressing the actual issue at hand. Addressing the actual issue from a respectful tone of voice is much more likely to lead to mutual respect and common ground. The most beautiful times I've seen respect displayed are when it comes from two people with different viewpoints. They have embraced diversity of thought and engaged in constructive dialogue, paving the way for innovation and compromise. They have dissected the particular issue and tried not to leave room for emotional reflections that could lead to an aggressive tone of voice. And although their debates might get passionate at times, they have learned to respect and sometimes even appreciate their differences. They have agreed to disagree. Each person respects the honesty of the other, and although they still might not agree, they seem to find a harmonious melody in their differences. Remember, without dialogue, there is no understanding. Without understanding, there is no unity. Without unity, there are no common goals. And without common goals, we might as well be stars scattered across the universe, shining alone with the unrealized potential of being a unified constellation. The beauty comes from us working together through our differences respectfully and collaboratively. My ideas become your template to edit. Your thoughts become my canvas to paint on. During this process, exponential creativity will take root and grow past the mountains, but only when respect is embraced as the cornerstone. Before the U.S. Constitution was created, its creators knew it would have to be amended to face future challenges. Among these amendments is the First Amendment, which includes our freedom of speech. What our Constitution does not have a policy on is how to respect each other in this process. This part is up to you and me. Chapter 2. Better Together. Harmony makes small things grow. Lack of it makes great things decay. Sallust. Once upon a time, in a small town, there was a community garden. This quaint garden was tended to by a school teacher, a carpenter, a bus driver, and a coffee shop owner. Each one of them brought unique ideas and experiences to the vegetable garden. They worked together in unison and harmony and shared the joy of watching their garden grow. As time passed, tension started to simmer. The school teacher and the carpenter wanted to plant tomatoes and cucumbers, while the bus driver and coffee shop owner wanted to experiment with other options. Disagreements also surfaced over the garden layout, as the carpenter wanted to plant all the vegetables in rows, but the bus driver and the school teacher wanted sections. The coffee shop owner made several attempts to bring about a compromise, but to no avail. Cliques formed, and trust eroded throughout the group. Small disagreements turned into heated arguments and personal attacks. One day, during a highly contentious meeting, harsh words flew back and forth like a food fight in a third-grade lunchroom. The warm synergy of the group was now cold, divided, and bitter. As tension grew, the garden that once thrived began to wither. The plants were neglected and wilted, choked out by weeds. Deprived of the care they once received, many of the plants died off from lack of water. As conflicts increased, garden production decreased, losing sight of the main objective. The rest of the community stopped supporting the garden due to its lack of production. The vibrant garden that once symbolized unity and cohesion was now lifeless. This is a testament to the destructive influence of division and self-interest. Without unity, there is no foundation. Without a foundation, there is no structure upon which to build and grow. And without growth, there is no fulfillment of our potential. In the end, unity must be prioritized and sought after as the cornerstone for growth and expansion. If the foundation is unity, then the concrete we stand on is the human beings we serve with. Inevitably, conflict will arise in any group effort at some point. How we handle conflict will determine the altitude of our collaborative airplane. Although some are watching our individual roles in the group, many only determine success by how well we work together. How well we work with others does not mean we will always agree. However, it will include how well we put aside our personal differences for the greater good of the group or project we're working on. For example, individuals may have different political ideologies. In these times, it is important not to focus on what divides us, but what brings us together if we plan to achieve our common goals. It's similar to a bus heading to Chicago with 20 people, where you have no clue what the other 20 people have planned once you all arrive in Chicago. However, you know you all have at least one thing in common. You definitely need to get to Chicago. Every board or collective group needs to arrive at a destination. For a school board, that destination is academic success, the safety of students, teacher support, and fiscal responsibility. Identify your destination. It's easy to get off track if you lose sight of the common goals. How do you know if you or your team has lost sight of the common goals? Indications might be that you or your team has resorted to personal attacks in public meetings. This is one clear example of a loss of focus on the greater good. Personal attacks are a clear indication that the focus is on people and not the objective. During my tenure on the Board of Education, I've seen board members storm out after meetings. I've seen yelling, screaming, and even a board member requesting a restraining order from the court against another board member because they no longer felt safe. Although I have mostly kept my cool, I am not exempt from feeling personally attacked or allowing another teammate to get under my skin. I am human after all. And although I have not mastered this, I practice separating my feelings from my choices on a daily basis. Some days I do better than others. However, I can honestly say that although I have had my share of conflict, I have attempted to seek platforms of one-on-one constructive dialogue with everyone I have had personal conflict with. For example, if I disagree with you on politics or an agenda item, it's not a personal conflict. It's only personal if one of us classifies this as a personal attack. Many times, the issue isn't about a disagreement at all. It could also be a personality trait. This could stem from one person not feeling heard, respected, or valued. Regardless of the personal conflict, I've always, to my memory, attempted to resolve the personal issue over a cup of coffee. Every time the other person agreed to meet with me, we were able to find common ground. These moments allow us to heal from our personal conflicts and get back on the bus to our destination. Although conflict is inevitable, I believe it is sometimes necessary. Although I've been on boards that vastly disagree on multiple topics, I've also witnessed boards and committees that vote in unison on every issue. This can be problematic from the community standpoint since it is obvious that there is never a different opinion. This can be viewed as untrustworthy from the outside looking in. Any organization that doesn't challenge itself will be challenged more harshly by the opposition. Therefore, it is a must to compile different viewpoints on the same team to offer opposing views where they can be constructive and not damaging. When a variety of viewpoints are welcomed and encouraged, the aura of the room will resonate with warmth and synergy harmoniously. However, the only way this works is if it is done respectfully. Chapter 3: Lead Singer Syndrome. As a lead singer, all I want to do is be in my own head and think about how great I am. That's a lead singer's disease. Mark McGrath. It is easy to think too highly of yourself when you have drafted your own theology and cross-checked it in your own head. Once you agree with yourself that you are right, you check with the supporters who believe like you. The supporters who believe in you agree. And the bubble you live in, which has its own government, makes you think you should be the next president of the United States. They tell you that when you get to your board meeting, you should shout it loud and let them know you won't stand for whatever nonsense they come up with. Then someone you've never met gives you a pair of magical glasses that allow you to see inside everyone else's head. You get to the meeting ahead of time only to see that every one of your colleagues has a bubble in their own head that has its own laws, governments, and rationale for what is right and wrong. Little did you know that you were sitting next to a king, an emperor, and the queen of the universe. You can clearly see on a tablet in their head that each ruler has a list of items they will argue based on what's important in their kingdom. Some of them have no consideration for what occurs in other kingdoms, just their own. You suddenly realize how closed minded it is not to consider others when voting for what's important to you and how you are just as guilty as they are. In that moment, it dawns on you. Your assumption that your perspective was the only valid one has been shattered by the diverse viewpoints existing in the minds of your peers. You've now been exposed to the intricate webs of belief systems and priorities in each individual's mental kingdom. Humility cleanses you. You understand that true leadership requires understanding, empathy, openness, and a willingness to consider perspectives outside of your own bubble. This does not mean that your values have to change unless you're open to change. It simply means understanding that we all have an environment that has formed and shaped our perspectives, and recognizing that the validity of our experiences and viewpoints can produce a deeper sense of connection and empathy. Sometimes, our past experiences can get in the way of us making decisions objectively. Like a teacher who might fail to make an unbiased decision about another teacher because of their personal relationship. True progress emerges when we embrace the complexity of diverse thought and engage in genuine dialogue that steps outside of the boundaries of our individual bubbles. Maintaining your values while respecting others can be accomplished. This type of empathy is where we will reach the height of harmony in a complex world. Deep in the heart of every elected official, there are four motives for every vote: conscious guided, majority influenced, party based affiliated, and attention seeking. These four will often overlap, but almost every vote will fall under at least one of these four categories. Conscious guided is the purest of the four, resting its voice on the foundation of a moral compass and the good of the cause. Whether it be the good of mankind or the integrity of our democracy, conscious guided votes are typically the most thoughtful and principled. They reflect the commitment to ethical considerations and the long term well being of the community. Majority influenced votes sing in the large choir and may sway with the popular opinion of committee or board to avoid disrupting the apple cart. Party or based votes align with the principles and policies of a political party and usually sing in a small quartet, showcasing loyalty to a specific ideology or political group. And then we have attention seeking votes on the center stage, with the crowd chanting their name, or at least in their own head. They are sometimes driven by the desire for recognition, visibility, or political posturing. And although these individuals are not usually lead singers, they could very well be carriers of lead singer syndrome. Lead singer syndrome can be best simplified by one phrase: my way or the highway. Although individuals might not ever voice this phrase, it will be obvious in their actions. There are two types of people who usually possess lead singer syndrome. Example A is the talented individual who has had success in their field and demands that they lead the way. Anyone who has other plans should be escorted off the premises. This individual might not say that they want to be the leader, but they publicly chop down other leaders when they get the chance. Example B is the individual who has not had success in their field in the past and does not know how to lead in their field, but insists that their leader is incompetent. Example B will find problems regularly, but will rarely provide solutions. It is very important to realize that being a part of a board is different from being a CEO of an organization. In no way should the position be viewed as a sovereign monarch with total power and superior intellect who rules over the people and peers we were meant to serve. Particularly, being on a school board is similar to being on the board of directors of a corporation. It involves collective decision making, where each member's perspective is crucial to the success of the organization. Public service involves diverse perspectives and humility. This allows officials to approach decision making with an openness to alternative viewpoints. During my time as board president, my personal goal was to remain unbiased in how I treated my colleagues, a challenge that required balancing respect for individual voices while ensuring meetings progressed efficiently and minimizing disruption. Although polarizing topics are inevitable, my goal was to focus on what we agreed upon more than why we disagreed. To avoid lead singer syndrome, I would prioritize collaboration and resist the temptation to dominate the stage. Sometimes, waiting until everyone has spoken to give your feedback is the best approach. Giving feedback in a confused setting where everyone wants to voice their opinion can be tricky and sometimes only adds to the chaos. The conscious guided approach can serve as a ruler against lead singer syndrome. A bird's eye view of the group discussion will provide an analytical approach to ask yourself what's needed for the discussion to reach a destination. Conscious guided encourage you to focus on the greater good and the well-being of the community rather than personal agendas. What good is being on a team if you are unable to use your teammates' strengths to your team's advantage? Make a goal of finding out all of your teammates' strengths and allowing them to sing a solo at some point. But ensure they join the choir as well so all voices can be heard as a group. Chapter 4. The instrument plays itself. All one has to do is hit the right keys at the right time and the instrument plays itself. Johann Sebastian Bach. Once upon a time in a busy city, there was a young boy named Alex who dreamed of playing the trumpet. He always wanted to be like Miles Davis, who he considered to be the best trumpet player ever. He had played the trumpet twice before and even learned the fundamentals from a family friend but never had a formal instructor. At 13, he was finally old enough to join the community youth band. But when the teacher handed him his sheet music, his enthusiasm quickly turned to anxiety. The sheet music appeared to be a form of hieroglyphics he had learned about in social studies. Being a trumpet player is not as easy as it looks, he thought to himself. Wondering how he would be able to play such a piece, he even considered giving up. After Alex decided to push forward, he took the sheet music to his music teacher, who gave him a piece of elementary advice. I will show you each note. Just remember to start slow, focus on the fundamentals, and play one note at a time. With a new outlook on his task, Alex paid careful attention to his teacher in great detail until he could play one note flawlessly. Then he would move on to the next note. Before he knew it, he was halfway done with the song. Although there were moments of frustration, and he was no Wynton Marsalis, he was progressing on a slowly but steady scale. In moments of exhaustion, he reminded himself of his teacher's advice. Focus on the fundamentals, one note at a time. He said to himself, "You can do this, Alex." Daily, he showed considerable improvement. Eventually, his fingers began to glide across the trumpet valves as he developed fundamental rhythm and timing techniques. With each day, he gained confidence, and by the end of the week, he was able to play the song all the way through. Once in a while, He would still hit a wrong note, but he knew he could do the fundamentals. If I can learn this song, I can learn any song, he thought to himself. When performance day came, Alex was excited but also nervous. He took to the stage with a foundation of confidence from all the hours he had put into learning the fundamentals of his craft. The performance was a success. Applause rang from every corner of the community theater. And as he took a bow, he knew that the hand claps were not the result of him being a natural with the born gift. The applause came from hours and hours of working on the fundamentals. From that day on, Alex relied on the lesson learned: hard work and fundamentals. He realized he could apply this principle to every other area of his life. The ultimate lesson was that success wasn't about talent or luck, but the result of dedication, perseverance, and a commitment to mastering the basics. In the rude awakening of realizing that everything I promised I would do when I ran for the Board of Education was contingent upon the opinion of 6 other board members and the influence of our superintendent, I immediately came to terms with the fundamentals of board governance shortly after being elected. During this process, I took my superhero cape off and put it back in my backpack. Although I believe we all have a superhero inside of us, before we learn to fly, we must first learn to walk and run, to paraphrase Friedrich Nietzsche. Joining the Board of Education in 2021, I was focused on developing on every promise I made the voters in our school district. Not caring what I had to sacrifice in my personal life, I took my commitment seriously and made every effort to be the best I could be. But similar to Alex, learning to play the trumpet and wanting to be the next Miles Davis, I was frustrated when reality set in. The fundamentals of dedication, perseverance, and a commitment to being respectful to others turned out to be the recipe for success. Amid hot topics and political discord, respect is the glue that holds a governing body together. I quickly learned that my kindergarten teacher gave me a jewel by grading me on how well I played with others. As time passed, I observed that every time we had a new election, there were board members who struggled with everything I struggled with when I first started. Not knowing how to get anything done, not knowing what their role was, and not realizing the fundamentals concerning governance. Without proper training in the fundamentals, frustration is inevitable. After you are voted on, you become a superhero to someone who believes you have powers you might not have. Some things we attempt to do, we later find out because of legislation or policy we cannot do. And any major progress that is attainable is only going to come from working with a team. This means that progress comes from hours, days, and sometimes weeks or months of working with colleagues, respecting opinions, and trying to find a common thread. For example, in 2022, as the president of the board, I named, supported, and led a campaign for a 61-cent levy that wasn't my first choice. I would have preferred to raise that tax levy so we could give teachers a more significant raise. However, the consensus of the group was to maintain 61 cents and extend the sunset. Because this was my plan B, but it was plan A to others in the group, I chose to be a team player so we could make progress as a team. Because of this, along with a beefy campaign strategy, Proposition Reed won at 70.9%, the highest win in 20 years. One of the fundamentals I learned from being on a board is that sometimes you are only as successful as the last man or woman on the team. If you are in leadership on your team and have strong leaders, sometimes you might consider selling your superhero cape to the costume shop and encouraging others to bring their ideas to the table. Being a team player is highly necessary and fundamental to leading any group. All leaders must be team players. Chapter 5. Finding Your Voice. You've got to dance like there's nobody watching. Love like you'll never be hurt. Sing like there's nobody listening. And live like it's heaven on earth. William W. Perky. Thursday, May 9th, 2024, 3:23 a.m. I've just put my 6-week-old son back down to sleep after his mother fed him and I changed his diaper. While he sleeps, I finally found a few minutes to step away and write this chapter. It's only a matter of time before he cries again, of course. Ironically, I can't help but be amazed at how unapologetically he yells, slurps, cries, sighs, whimpers, and grunts without any concern for how I feel about his remarks. In fact, no one taught him any of this. From day one, he knew what he wanted and was not hesitant to voice his needs and yell his concerns. Even the simplest sigh will not be silenced. Not once have I witnessed him look at me and consider what I might think about his opinion on the matter. His confidence is unmatched by any statesman or public speaker I've ever met. At one point, you were 6 weeks old, with opinions that would project loudly throughout the crowd or definitively to any adult in the house. Your opinion was the only opinion that mattered, and everyone around you was here to serve you in the city of Babytown, where you were the mayor. And then you grew up. What happened along the way? Somehow, social perception started to become more important, and suddenly, expressing our needs and desires became more complex. Could it be that we now consider the feelings of others, or that we weigh the consequences of our words and actions? Could it be that the criticism of our thoughts could be so heavily scrutinized that we've become afraid to utter them, lest they be met with disapproval or ridicule? As we navigate through adulthood, let us not forget the lessons learned in the city of Babytown, where authenticity reigned supreme. As long as your voice was authentic, it demanded respect. While some claim that we should all sing the same note to have cohesion, I argue that while singing the same note might be unison, it definitely is not harmony. Harmony is only achieved when each voice embraces its unique pitch, adding depth and richness to the collective melody. Your note must be heard. Why? Because without it, everyone who thinks like you will not be heard. Everyone who counts on you to speak for them will not be heard. And the true essence of diverse dialogue will be lost in a sea of uniformity. By silencing your note, you deny everyone who believes in your seat at the table of civil discourse. The voiceless are on the sidelines, and their stories remain untold. Finding your voice in the simplest form might not be about your voice at all, but the people who share your view deserve to have representation. The beauty of being an adult is that we learn to be tactful in our approach somewhere along the way. So with the mandate of delivering a precious package and the refined responsibility of doing so with care and grace, we have the urgency of speaking our viewpoint like a hungry baby at 3 a.m. that has been silenced for too long. Being tactful means that we would hopefully not do so at 3 a.m., unless that were the only time your voice could be heard. Ensuring that we are sensitive to the needs and feelings of others while staying true to our conviction is the balance and the complexity of harmony that we strive to attain to make collective progress and not just individual notoriety. In this call to action, We must self-govern our freedoms by gauging boldness with unity, assertiveness with respect, and confidence with meekness. As long as we deliver the package with integrity, we can trust that our voice will resonate with impact. However, if we are chosen to be a leader and do not use our voice, we are similar to a captain of a ship who refuses to steer. The ship will drift into turbulent waters, leaving the crew without direction. It is in turbulent waters that the real value of leadership is revealed. Even if you serve with a group you do not lead, the time will come for you to lead in one aspect or another. Your perspective, expertise, and questions will shed light on our shared journey. At the end of the day, when we consider social rankings that we've created that really only exist in our own heads, we will have to admit that our freedom to speak as representatives should never be restricted by the perception of minuscule what ifs. What if you say the wrong thing? What if you ask a question that doesn't make sense? What if your opinion is not popular? While society may construct hierarchies based on wealth, status, or popularity, our worth and dignity as human beings remain unchanged. Regardless of how it aligns with social expectations, every perspective deserves to be heard and respected, including yours. The moment others feel isolated, excluded, or belittled, we've given hostility an opportunity to brew, where there will be little room for growth. The journey toward unity is fueled by each authentic voice. So without your voice, the puzzle is missing a crucial piece. In light of this, do not speak to be heard. Speak because you absolutely have something to say that must be said because what you have is authentic. Speak without inhibition, like a 2-month-old who needs to be fed. While you learn to speak freely and authentically, you must empower others to do the same, even if they do not always share the same views. It is only right that everyone has the liberty to engage in an honest exchange for the good of the cause. When you speak freely and encourage others to do the same, you will inherently create a culture of unity where everyone feels safe to voice their concerns and ask questions freely. Embrace your authenticity, empower others to do so, and forge unity. Chapter 6: Black and White Keys.